Okay, fellas, we are going live. We're half an hour earlier than normal because I have to catch a flight. And I really wanted to come on and chat to everybody. How you
So
doing,
our,
fellas?
so our normal 30 minutes of prep time beforehand is gone. So it's going to be even sloppier than.
Hard to imagine, but here we go.
I didn't help out very much.
All good.
You want me to say why?
No, I don't.
No, don't do it.
Alrighty.
You guys have been traveling, so what's news?
Well, we were around. Last week we were at Bloomstrand's thing, which is sort of interesting because he posted a thread and it filled up my inbox with like people. So he mentioned that one of the questions that was asked is who's long Tesla, and he mentioned that there was laughter, and I wouldn't say lit up, but a number of people reached out to me and they were like, is this really what it was? That's so closed-minded, that shuts down conversation. And I think what I would say is I think that the idea of being curious is much more beneficial than being judgmental. When you're in a room and Chris asks if anybody's long Tesla and you have any idea what his view of Tesla is, it's somewhat hard not to laugh. I am beyond a thought on the equity. I don't really care. And since I got there, my life got a lot better. It's either going to be worth a lot more or a lot less or the same or neither or none. And I don't care. But, you know, when he asked the question, I laughed because of who was asking, not because of you. And I think in general, that's probably not that far off from the group idea.
It's just to contextualize it. It blasted through $1 trillion market cap. It's been actually fully diluted for a little while, but I guess market cap is more people know about that. Is it like a 300 PE? Did I see that?
I guess,
of that now.
Earnings aren't the right measure, but anyway, it doesn't matter. It's you're paying a lot for a future.
Yeah, I see what you're saying. The PE doesn't matter because it's going to grow into the valuation.
Well, I'm just saying, like, you wouldn't value that on trailing earnings, right? I don't think anybody is doing that.
No,
I don't think anybody's doing that either. just to clarify.
Yeah.
I think the other part of why I don't even think laughter was the right thing necessarily. It was more, we had just all been talking
Rueful
about
laughter.
it. Well, we've been talking about the numbers of it before that little vote started. And so, you know, it's just sort of like, you know, after everyone had expressed their opinion and then no one raises their hand, basically, like, you know, it's just sort of like a little bit funny. There was no like, and therefore I'm better than everyone else, or that my mind is closed to it or anything like that. It was just, I don't know, like people are reading way too much into that.
Yeah. And I don't know. People were like, oh, this is a bunch of, value guys that are destined to underperform and whatnot. And, as somebody that was in the room, I guess I'm bound to take a little bit of offense to that comment. What I would say is that in that room, there were people that pitched, high multiple stocks. There were people that pitched cyclicals. There were people that pitched other things. Like, I don't, everybody was, well, not everybody, but there was a large majority was Caucasian male. If people want to, take homage with that or whatever, if they want to, be upset about, yeah, that's what I'm looking for. Not homage. But, like that's a fair critique. And, maybe a little bit more Silicon Valley mindset in the room from one or two people wouldn't be the worst idea. But I don't think, look, I just continue to go back to it. Unless you're in the room, you don't know what happened. And even somebody that was in the room, I
still doesn't know what happened.
That's right. Like I have my version of what happened and he has his, and that's just kind of how it is. Right. So that was fun, but it was a good weekend. A lot of good guys.
Really good fundamental research on display there. Kind of almost, you forget that people are still doing real work in markets and like actually
Well, look,
businesses.
so I do think this is like a legit pushback. I mean, there's a lot of tech guys that do real work that like we just don't fully get or don't look at the world the same, and that's like fine. People that
I
say
meant
that
more like passive indexing as as a broad category.
Yeah, I think that's fair. But like I don't know, one of the nights at dinner, like I talked about hypergrowth with one of the guys, and we were saying that like, for the right business, you can pay. I mean, really, if the business is small enough and it's growing enough, you could pay 30, 50 times sales for some of these. I just don't know which ones. If I did, I would be buying them.
You probably just don't want to do it for all of them. I
think a basket is unlikely to outperform over, I mean, if you believe in historical studies having any relevance, I guess would be the way to say it.
This is a kind of a bumpy segue, but there's I can tie it together. Just one second.
Hang on, wait. I'm going to guess growth and value are at a wide dispersion.
They're tied at the hip. Did you know that?
I did not know.
That's how you do evaluation.
Literally.
Yeah, you got to incorporate some growth. Now, I was going to say, I read the quarterly letters of some of the big investors when they come out. And one of them was Bill Miller's, and it looked to me like Bill Miller maybe have written his last quarterly letter. Do you guys catch that one?
No, I didn't see that.
No.
Who's going to be taking over, Samantha?
The Bill Miller Jr. and the other lady there. Yes, it's Samantha.
Yeah. Huh, interesting.
I just thought it was an interesting.
So it happens moment. When you make shit tons on Bitcoin and growth stocks, folks.
Well, that's the point that I was going to make. That he said, we're in a bull market that started in March 2009. I don't think that he was saying. He said he's not predicting that it's going to end or anything like that. He just said it'll end when it ends. But I just thought it was interesting because he has, for exactly that reason, he's a guy who owns a lot of Bitcoin and he's been a really great growth stock investor his entire career. And taking a step out now, is there any significance in that? Like, just maybe can't find the kind of things that he likes to aim at.
I don't know, Bill. I'm sorry for what I'm about to say, but he's kind of up there in years.
He makes that point,
and he's super rich. So, yes. I don't know why. I don't even know if I want to stay in the game. I don't know why I would stay in the game if I was him.
Because it's fun. Because you're crushing it. Because it's easy.
Yeah, but at some point, like, what are you doing it for? I don't know. I get it. Everybody's got to retire. Why not walk out on top?
Get out of the war. He makes the point that he's been in the markets for 40 years and he's achieved 10. He's allotted 10, which is 70. I understand, but he's a little bit older than that, I think, isn't he?
I don't know. If he says he's 70, I'm going to go with he's 70.
Well, he said 30. I think he said at least 10. I don't know.
Yeah. I don't know, man. I'd probably just go chill on a boat somewhere.
It's fair. Everyone's aiming for that.
Yeah.
I'll be hanging around until value works. So I'm going to be an old man.
Cute.
Well, I mean,
Jeff.
I don't know if he's got grandkids. I don't know his personal life. I would be bowing out if I were him too.
Then what about the two old legends who are still running Berkshire? They passed 10 more than 20 years ago, more than a score ago.
I don't have it in me. I wouldn't want to work for that long, for that hard. And I know that they love it and all this tap dancing to work stuff. I would argue there's a non-illegitimate argument to be made that Buffett has always been a workaholic. So expecting him to hang it up is unlikely to occur. And I don't know what Munger really does.
Yeah, I'm looking for a Munger type role.
Yeah.
Yeah, where's the job posting for that one?
The other article, the other letter that I read that I thought was kind of interesting was the Third Avenue one. Marty Whitman passed away a few years ago, but Third Avenue continues on, and Third Avenue does as much in credit as they do in equity. So I just think they're kind of an interesting shop to read. The first thing that they discuss is inflation. I was saying to Jake before we came on, I feel like I could just about write a Third Avenue letter, not a criticism of Third Avenue. It's just, I think the same way, for all of the disasters that have befallen both of us through that period of time. It's very group thinky, but I kind of I like their letters. And the thing that they talk about is inflation. And they made this kind of interesting point. The Fed has its own calculation for the rent equivalent home costs. So like if you own a home, they translate that across into rent so they can do their calculations. And they calculated 2.6%. It just escapes me. I think that's for the last, I don't know if that's for the quarter or it's either quarter or year. I just
today.
Let's say it was year. Let's say it was for the year. And then Zillow has Zillow just takes in all those data points and they have a calculation, and theirs was 11.6%. And Third Avenue says, Zillow. If you take Zillow's number and then you feed it into the 5.3% number that the Fed got for the rolling 12 months, you get 8.3%, which is a very substantial, inflation that we all know that the Fed slightly undercounts because they undercount because they're incentivized to do so.
Zillow's about to get canceled, like the Chapwood and Billion Price Project and Shadow Stats, and
they're not buying houses anymore. Maybe that's what happened. And then the final point that Third Avenue made, it's just escaping me at the moment.
So 8% though, kind of more realistic right now, like year over year.
That was what they thought. And then they made the point that house price, this was the other thing they made, that the house prices are up like 18.3% over the last 12 months. And even if you regard that as transitory, like if you think about that over a 3-year period, it's like 5.7% a year for 3 years, which, that's very, very substantial inflation. But Fed's saying 2% is their target. So they're way, way overshooting that target.
Dude, I feel like you don't listen to my podcast. You need to check out the Logan episode.
What did he say?
He thought that house prices would go up like 21% over the 4 years ended 2024. And he was like, the problem is it happened in 1 year. And his like, he called it the most unhealthy housing market that he's seen. And the reason that he says it's so unhealthy is he didn't anticipate, I don't want to put words in his mouth, but I think that the pandemic created abnormal shortages relative to what he expected, and also like pulled forward this demand that, was sort of tough to predict. So now you got a bunch of labor backlogs and all that stuff. It's we'll see how it all turns out.
Is that a commentary on housing, or is that a commentary on inflation?
I don't know that it has to be either or. I think it can kind of be a little bit of both.
Yeah, this is one of the things that breaks my head a little bit. Like we talk about with Mike, lumber prices and and housing being, for the last decade, and you can see like housing, probably there weren't enough houses built because there was the hangover from beforehand.
Ivy Zellman disagrees, for the record. I don't know that she's right though. I've gone through her deck a couple times. I can't figure it out.
And I've said that I don't know that that's the case either. I just saw that it was under. It just looked like it was lower than it has been traditionally through this part of the cycle. It's just a very, very slow running cycle. Like we're still only like midway through the rate at which we have, and it tends to be quite a sawtooth pattern, and we're really like a very flat recovery. But the question is, how much of this is like a housing shortage and how much of this is just like a whole lot of money dumped into the system? And that's the hard thing to kind of figure out which one is driving which. Maybe it's a little bit of both, as you say. Maybe it's a lot of both.
Yeah, I think it is. I don't know. I mean, look, I think that ultimately when rates are where they are, the affordability is pretty good. Now, people come back and they're like, well, what about the down payment? I don't know all of the necessary requirements to where you could get the 97% FHA loan. I think it's for your first house. I could be wrong on that though. Maybe it's got to be multifamily. But I don't think people are priced out per se. I do really believe that if you're buying a house and it's moderately levered right now, if you can afford the payment, you better really like your house. Because if rates go up, you may not have much equity left, which is fine, right? If you can pay it down over 30 years, who gives a shit, really? I mean, you've got somewhere to live and it's just a markdown on paper and whatever. But I do think liquidity could be the risk that people
if you have
are running.
To move, it's an issue, right?
That's right. So hopefully you like where you live is kind of the takeaway. Because then I think you're kind of hedged. I know somebody's out there laughing at me. Fuck you. No, I'm kidding. I love all you, especially you, Bill Miller. Shout out to you. Anyway,
Bill Miller Senior or Bill Miller Junior? Bill Miller Junior.
Oh,
I don't know. I don't know Junior. Junior will probably start listening once he gets, higher status. There's only 10 listeners, 10.
Yeah.
So,
someone has to die and then there's someone could take their spot.
Yeah, or retire. He doesn't have to die. He can just say, all right, Junior, I've done my listening. I've learned what I have to from these guys. Now it's your turn.
I'm now dumber for having listened. I have to retire.
Yeah. I came into Value After Hours with Alpha and I leave out of the game. You're welcome, folks.
You're talking about that supply and demand and like, which is it? And, or is it, is it just a bunch of money? It's almost as if it's really hard to figure out when there's millions of people who are making decisions and there's billions of transactions and they have a particular calculus in their head of where they find subjective value. It's almost as if it would be impossible for anybody sitting in Washington, D.C. to know what the right thing to do is. And maybe we should let the market figure some things out once in a while.
I've read on Twitter that they are the best forecasters in the game.
Oh, well, they are putting up good returns in their PAs. So that makes sense.
I do think one of the more compelling arguments that I have heard for why inflation is less transitory than someone like I may be in the camp of is, and this is like really famous last words, but there's been so much pain in a lot of the distributors of commodities and the commodity businesses in general that there has been a lot of consolidation in a lot of different markets. And a common theme, and this is bound to be said by people that are long, so call it selection bias if you want, but is that a lot of these industries that have historically been pretty shitty have now consolidated into 3 to 4 rational players. And therefore, even if you can't take price necessarily, you don't have to be in a price war, right? The competition is more rational throughout the chain. And if you have a scenario like 2020 that gives you the chance to bump prices once, you may not find yourself lowering them down the road, even if your inputs go down, right? You may actually get some of that margin for once in your life, or
and
in
maybe
a decade.
even withhold some volume to keep that price at a
none of this is going to happen. But
rational
I think it's
level.
nice to think about it.
I mean, I tend to sort of agree. On the other hand, when Mike and we were calling people in the lumber business last year. Maybe it was earlier in the year, but people were really shell shocked from the 5 years leading up to that mooning period. So there wasn't like a whole lot of appetite to increase capacity.
It's underinvested. That's what creates this like capital cycle theory. That's what creates the
shortage.
Yeah, it's what creates the conditions that lead to the next little boom, and then that'll draw all of the people who are currently like making NFTs and all of that other shit, and they'll come in, and then everybody will be a mining expert.
Yeah, I do think one thing that I found myself wondering is a common sort of theme too was these institutions not wanting to touch industry or energy, and they kind of want like investments in renewables. And part of me was thinking, shout out to the homie, The Science of Hitting Investing, for putting the seed in my head. And then I kind of expanded on it. But, like those are, if you're Harvard, do you really need an oil investment? Like you got enough money anyway. There is a part of your endowment that's not really about returns, and it is actually about driving society where you think it should be. Now, we can disagree and debate whether or not oil should be in that equation. I would argue it should be, but fine. I don't actually disagree with them saying that industry has enough funds to self-fund itself. Capital going into it has resulted in decimation of capital for a long time. Like, we're just not going to play in that game. I don't think that's patently stupid of them.
Have fun staying poor.
But they're Harvard.
Just kidding.
Their returns don't even matter. The endowment's so big. Like, who gives a shit?
They've underperformed, apparently. That just means they didn't hold a whole lot of it. They weren't 150% S&P 500.
Well, and I guess what I'm saying is,
Yeah.
I do think that they are. I mean, the allocators there would probably, call me up and chew me out for saying this, but I just kind of wonder how much they're like, look, like really behind closed doors. They're like, look, this may underperform, but it's good for the world as we perceive it to be. So that's how we're going to allocate our capital. And if we underperform, so be it. And I bet their freaking alumni base doesn't care. Right? They're like, whatever, we'll just shovel more money at you if you underperform. It doesn't matter.
That's fair.
So it's kind of it's different, right? Not the same goals.
Do you guys have topics?
Or I'm wrong.
JT, you got some veggies for today?
Of course. When would I ever show up without veggies? Do we want to do them right now?
Sure.
All right. Well,
I'm going to talk Facebook.
At your own peril. So I have a kind of gross one for us today, which should be fun. And it's this little protozoan that's called the Toxoplasma gondii. And gondii, I'm not sure exactly how people say that, but it causes toxoplasmosis. And it turns out 30 to 40% of the world's population is infected with toxoplasmosis to varying degrees. So in rats, it will cause rats to take risks, including like go up to cats and basically get eaten. And it obviously greatly increases your chances of being eaten if you go up to a cat and you're a rat. But that's where toxoplasma wants to end up, is in the guts of a cat, where it then will come out of the cat in the cat's poop and somehow find its way into humans from cat poop. Now, lest you think that there are all these people out there eating cat poop, I don't think that's actually true, because this little thing can live for a year outside of the gut of whatever animal it's in and get transferred. So somehow, a year, touches something, it touches something else, and eventually it winds up in your mouth. And that's how 30 to 40% of people have this. So I know, and it's disgusting, but we're going to keep going.
Somehow it ends up in your mouth.
So it seems, well, we're going to get to more of that. So it seems to...
we?
Yeah. It seems to preferentially prefer to take residence in the amygdala of the brain of whatever animal that it's in. And so oddly enough, the amygdala, when it is suppressed, will make rats less fearful and actually more sexual. And so if you remove the amygdala of an animal, it will become hypersexual, fearless, and I'm just reading from, this is research, it's not me, become hyperoral, which means inappropriate objects placed in the mouth.
There you go.
So
we need to take some swabs down to Wall Street and find out what's going on.
So we will get to that. But a lot of this came, or the inspiration of digging into this more came from this guy that I follow on Twitter named Ethan Mollick, who's a professor at Wharton that studies innovation and entrepreneurship. And what they found was that Toxoplasma gondii, the infection, is associated with a subsequent increase in the probability of becoming an entrepreneur. So your risk appetite in the world may be dictated by this little tiny thing that forms cysts in the brain. And like there's these little 50 micrometer, which is 1 to 10 to the -6 power of a meter. Little tiny
easy
things.
To visualize.
Well, sorry, it's like roughly the diameter of a human hair.
Okay.
So people, like students with this who have been measured, are 180% more likely to start a venture, and infected founders have 8% more revenue when surveyed in the venture space. So it does make you wonder, what if you're a trader or an investor, or maybe you want to get tested to see, God, am I predisposed to risk because of this little tiny protozoa that is infecting my amygdala and changing how I perceive risk? Or maybe if you're a VC, you actually want to measure your potential founders that you want to invest into, and maybe slip a little cat poop into their food. I don't know.
That was what I was going to say. Is this a risk factor, or is this one of the things that you 8% more revenue? That's material.
Hey, I mean, sometimes you gotta do
whatever
break
is necessary.
a few eggs, to make an omelet. So here's what I think is where it gets weird is that
Here's where it gets weird.
yeah,
Good.
Yeah, good. I was looking forward to that. I'm
at-
convinced I'm not even mature enough for this segment, by the way.
yeah, that's fine. Google Trends, if you look at like 2010, there's a liftoff in people searching for cat videos. So I'm thinking, maybe there was an infection period there, and that's why everyone's risk taking deep into this bull market. It's because it's all toxoplasmosis.
I actually have a theory that right now, despite all the surveys and despite the valuations, and this is going to sound really stupid, but I think these IPOs and some of the SPACs that we're seeing may actually be some really, really good 10-year businesses to own. Because I think that coming out of 2010, there were some tax incentives that created some really good companies. I don't know. I'm going to be really interested to see how this period seasons. Obviously, starting valuations are a headwind.
Yeah, I would probably, if I was a betting man, I would say incredibly high dispersion with some of probably the biggest winners of all time, but a base rate of like nuclear fallout.
Yeah, I don't think that I disagree with that.
That's because we're just part of a big group think chamber bill. That's all.
Yeah, that's right.
So can we deduce anything from the fact you're wearing a Patagucci vest there? Have you joined the?
It's cold in my
hedges?
house. That's the
Patagucci.
that's what you can deduce.
Patagucci and toxoplasmosis, and you're a superstar trader.
That's what we figured out in this week.
The really scary thing about the
all I know is that
toxoplasmosis-
Jake's putting a lot of stuff in his mouth. That's the only thing that I took from that entire segment.
Hyper oral was the term.
The scariest thing is that it impacts your behavior so much. Like the cats, rats showing up in front of cats. Like I think they're attracted to the smell of cat urine as well. Like it's very, it completely gets rid of their fear of cats and it reverses it and makes them attracted to them. Who knows what that does
like
to humans?
Sexually attracted to them is what one study showed. Yeah, which I don't know what kind of like Tom and Jerry stuff you're watching to come up with that one, but
dude, I'll tell you what, that's some Darwinism cold stuff for the rat. It's like, oh, you get all turned on and all of a sudden this cat just, it's like buying a value stock.
That's how you want to go, isn't it?
Yeah.
Eaten by a cat or with toxoplasmosis.
Yeah.
I mean, there's got to be.
It's that Altice murder right there.
It's not necessarily about, like you're saying that
Old.
toxoplasmosis has these beneficial effects too. Like increased risk-taking behavior is not necessarily all negative because it makes you become an entrepreneur and then it makes you generate 8% more revenue than you otherwise would.
Yeah, maybe. I mean, is it? We sort of have this idea that humans are a little biased towards optimism, which probably helps us in an emergent way, but maybe not in the individual way.
It helps society. It doesn't help individuals.
Right. So this is maybe a comparable thing where it's from the individual standpoint, it may actually be suboptimal, but from grinding the wheels forward of society, it is perhaps more optimal.
I think if I look at my portfolio, it's pretty clear I don't have toxoplasmosis.
You got a real shortage of it, huh?
There's not a lot of risk taking in that portfolio. Bill, how's your portfolio?
There's your problem.
I think I probably have a moderate amount of
He's been eating some cat turds.
cat shit.
It's the cat shit portfolio.
Yeah, just a little bit.
Yeah, that's really scary. It used to be the thing that if you were, the cat lady would die of toxoplasmosis.
Well, so it can like eventually cause so
go.
many cysts in your brain that it will like mess up your, the function and like lead to like actual, real health consequences. For the most part, people don't notice that they have it. Obviously, like we're not all 30 to 40% of us are not running around, like cat shit zombies. So,
Just got this urge to go and put everything on red and just let it ride. Just let it keep on going.
So speaking about just like brains and how they're messed up, I had this talk with a woman about how I need to sleep better. So I'm like, all right, I'm gonna try to sleep better. Well, that's not going too well. But you guys have kids. You'll know this. I switch sides of the bed with my wife. This is totally unrelated, but Jake talking about tumors in your brain is what triggered the thought. Every fucking night, my 4-year-old comes up and I just hear like right up in my ear. And I'm like, bro, get away from me. I'm in deep sleep. Then he goes away. Then like the 6-year-old's coming in 2 hours later and I got to pee sometime. There's no way I'm getting 8 hours of sleep for like the next decade.
Yeah.
So I'm going to die of tumors. And I don't even eat cat poop.
Yeah.
I'm sorry I brought that up, but it's been bothering me.
Well, sleeping is a very important part of life, and it's hard to function if you don't get good sleep. So you got to be careful. I'm careful to make sure that and it's hard with little kids because they interrupt all the time, but there are lots of things you can do, like exercising, trying not to be too stressed.
Locking the door.
Yeah, well, can't do that.
Okay.
Wife won't let me. But then there's no caffeine sort of too late in the day because caffeine's got a very long half-life. All those things, got to be careful of that. And then like no devices an hour before you go to sleep. You can control a lot of it. There's a lot of it you can control. But one thing that I found that makes it really, really hard to go to sleep is lying there thinking, I really got to go to sleep.
Yeah. Yeah.
Infrared sauna before bed is a game changer for the deep sleep.
The heck is an infrared sauna?
Oh baby, let's get into it. It's a big wooden box that you get in and just sweat out all the impurities.
Do you have that?
Yeah.
Wow.
What about melatonin?
I don't indulge a lot, and I'm kind of a tightwad. But when it comes to health stuff, the wife and I will pay up for things. And
you find that works? Do you do it an hour before sleep? For an hour?
An hour would be a fairly long time. Depends on how high you have the temperature as well. I'm usually like a good 30 minutes, and that'll be real nice. Shower off.
You.
Boom. Sleep
some
like a
Joe
log.
Rogan stuff or some Tim Ferriss stuff right there.
We're just scratching the surface, man. I got all kinds of crazy shit.
What about melatonin? Do you have any melatonin pills? I've heard that that's something that can.
I don't do that. I have if I'm traveling, like we'll try to reset the clock a little bit, especially if it's like a really, big time zone shift. But no, generally like getting sunlight into your eyeballs first thing in the morning, it will get the melatonin like timer going like better than if you don't do that. So that helps kind of set your circadian rhythm.
So you're saying I need to wake up and stare at the sun?
Just like go outside, get some fresh air, like don't wear sunglasses in the morning. Like I try that's kind of that helps, I think.
What else?
Paid up for the chili pad, which is a basically like a mattress cover that will circulate cold or whatever temperature, but typically cold water through it so that you stay cooler and sleep deeper.
I've been sweating. I need that.
I've experimented with a teaspoon of honey before bed, and it will lead to like very vivid dreams. I don't know why that happens exactly, but I've read about it and tried it, and I found it to be kind of true.
You don't continue to do that though? Dreams are too vivid?
Yeah, that's too scary. No, I don't know. I just like forget sometimes. I just don't do it. Also, I don't know if I need to add any extra sugar over and above the amount that I make or take in. Sleep specific.
Do you do the chill the room down to whatever it is, 67 degrees or whatever you're supposed to be at?
Yeah, we keep the house pretty cold in the winter and don't.
Dude's in a Patagucci.
Right. So here's the other weird one, mouth taping. So I tape my mouth shut at night.
Do you really?
Yeah. So I only breathe through my nose.
Huh.
I found that actually makes a pretty big difference. Like I've A/B tested that one a fair amount.
Does it hurt when you take the tape off?
Less so if you're cleanly shaven. A little bit more so, but it's not so bad. It's like it's almost like an athletic tape that, it's not like you're putting duct tape on your face or something.
My wife might like if I did that during the day.
Yeah, you could try that.
It hurt my podcasting career, but
I
don't know how that's going anyway.
Save it all up for the podcast.
That's fair. Just rip it off and just go nuts.
The words just come out. those are good tips. Let's do a segue. Let's do Facebook.
We can do Facebook. Earnings, interesting. You got
what were they, like 35% year on year, something like that?
I don't know the actual earnings. I can tell you that the ARPU growth globally was 27%. You can, to use Netflix's terms, 32%, Europe 33%, Asia Pacific 17%, rest of the world 41%. But the big news is the Zuck machine is going to create the metaverse. And he's going to be, I think, this is going off memory, do your own work. I think he said that they're guiding to like 90 billion in expenses next year. To put that in perspective, Target's revenue is 100 billion.
I thought this was a cap light business.
Negatory, Julio. Hasn't been for a while.
Yeah.
What's the money going into? How do you spend?
Well,
90
I
billion?
think that's what I think that's what people are trying to figure out.
Not your pocket now.
Well, my man Akram's Razor, his theory is that they may have developed their own chip. I'm pretty sure he said that publicly. And I think that one of the things that's interesting is
is that a chip that gets implanted in me, or is that?
No, that's the Bill Gates.
Okay.
Demonetized. Sorry. Boom. Thanks, Google. Now I got my head in
Bill.
a different place. It's okay. No, so the changes that Apple implemented is causing some havoc among the advertising industry. Specifically, tracking and attribution are sort of the issues that people are speaking about. I think Zuckerberg, I'm a huge Oculus fan, as you guys know from.
Do you have one?
Yeah, and I fucking love it. I think it's amazing. And I think that people, I'll tell you what I really think people are sleeping on is I think that assuming the trend line in airline miles traveled leading up to 2019 and then post-COVID, that is a scary, scary proposition. I happen to know of a consulting firm that just ordered 60,000 Oculuses and distributed it to their workforce. They have a television in-house studio, and they're sending Oculuses out to boardrooms to have presentations in the boardrooms, right? So it's like VR presentations. They're not perfect yet, but like this stuff is coming. And I think that I don't know that Facebook's going to win, but I think I understand what Zuckerberg's doing with what he's trying to invest in. And I think what he's saying is I want my own closed system so that I never have to deal with like Apple's tax ever again or being beholden to somebody else. And if I can win the next sort of version of the world, then I will own the whole thing, like create this closed loop. It's not crazy to me. I don't know how you assess the probability. And I think that he's, it's going to be, I'm fascinated to watch this all play out because last night people read some of the guidance and he says, I'm almost certain I'm doing this one off memory, but I think he said like 3 to 5 years before you even start to see any progress in these investments. That's easy to read like the first quarter out and be like, oh, I got a long-term time horizon.
Yeah.
Let's see like 2 years out because this guy has not stopped the investment ramp. And it's amazing to see what that company has been investing on the expense side. It's just incredible. And it's amazing to see the revenue continue to grow at just huge rates on huge bases. And that's despite, all of the concerns that I share with you guys about, what's the duration of these assets and stuff. And end of the day, one thing that was kind of interesting that came out over the past week, shout out to Modest Proposal for sharing this one, but they did a TikTok versus Reels comparison. And one of the complaints about Instagram Reels is that it was too targeted. So like people like that TikTok has a bunch of different things and that people are like authentic and it doesn't feel fed to you. Reels almost feels like too tailored to certain users and they want more spontaneity. So Zuck said that he's going to start developing the apps with young people in mind. It'd be interesting to see how many changes. And, on top of all of the news that has come out about it in the recent past, I don't know. It's going to be real interesting, man. I can make a really articulate argument that this is one big value trap, and I can make a really articulate argument that they're investing for the future. And I don't know which one will win.
I almost bought a Rift last year, and I saw it again this year and thought I might get one for Christmas. What is the benefit? There's a good question here from Beefy Capital. So I'm just saying I'm sympathetic to this view, and I do think that the next operating system, like the shift has gone from the desktop operating system to probably your browser to probably mobile, and then the next one is probably, I don't know if it's the Rift or whatever it is, but it's probably a VR type interface. But there's a good question here from Beefy Capital. What's the benefit of doing a presentation over VR versus Zoom?
Well, I mean, I don't know. I guess the question back to Beefy, please, hit us up in the comments is, have you used a Rift yet?
What is that? Is that the headset?
Well, yeah. The Oculus. Yeah.
Okay.
I mean,
about $300 from what I can see.
Yeah.
Is that entry level?
It feels real. Like you have like sensory like feelings that I don't think you get on Zoom. Zoom is very 2D. Like the Oculus is very immersive.
Do you need any other hardware to make it operate? You literally just have the headset and like the
I don't.
things.
So I don't.
Haptic bodysuit.
Yeah, I mean, I don't know what this consulting firm is doing, but like my buddy who he and I talk about this with, like he just said to me, he goes, so this is not a presentation comment, but he goes, the technology's just not there yet, but it's a matter of time. AR with deepfake tech is going to change the game. Think of watching a movie in 3D on Oculus where you can pick the characters and then you deepfake your own like face onto the characters. Like that's pretty fucking cool.
That's very near-term stuff, right? Like that can't be that far
It's not
away.
that far away. So, I mean, then you think of like, I think about why I'm so hesitant on airlines and stuff that's airline related is I could see a scenario where, maybe I go look at the David in VR or AR or VR, I guess. And then I say, okay, well, I'd like to fly there and actually feel the experience and touch it and whatever. But if you get like consulting firms in mass adopting this stuff and they're no longer flying around the US, like, I don't know. Good luck. A lot of the airline's profit margin is that. Not so much Spirit, but like the big hub carriers. I don't know.
We inch one step closer to the Matrix.
Well, yeah. I mean, yes. And I think why Zuckerberg would say that he's got the core competency, because I've sort of debated.
He's a robot already. Oh,
yeah. But it is sort of the next logical extension of social, right? Is the idea like what he wants to, or my perception of what he wants to be able to do is you're in your living room and the three of us want to have a conversation, but we don't want to do it this way. I want to look over here and then look over here and see Jake and Toby. And all of a sudden I'm doing it and it feels very real. It's got a long way to go, but I think it's inevitable. Who wins is kind of the harder question.
So you're currently using it to play games?
Yeah.
Are they fun?
Specifically boxing. Yeah, they kick ass, but I don't know how to knock the guy out. And it upsets me. The other thing is like, I always hyperextend my elbow. I never like when I'm really going for a knockout, I end up kind of
hurting yourself.
So I'm like, But yeah,
it feels real then.
Yeah, for sure. It does.
What's the lag like?
It's not. There's
no
not.
lag.
It's awesome. I mean, for now, it's just a cool like novelty toy. But I haven't checked if they fixed Facebook TV. But like, I would 100% sit down and watch an NBA game on that stuff, or NFL if you gave me like a sideline view. I think it'd be sick.
So yeah, so you're not sitting down watching it. You're sitting down as if you're at the game and you can look around and see.
Yeah,
that's interesting.
It's dope.
Well, I'll get one and I'll report back at some stage.
And
I'll report back having bought a whole lot of Facebook stock.
Yeah.
Yeah. Well,
Enslaved.
I think what he's saying is like, what I would say is there's the development and developer community is not there yet. If I were running Facebook, I would just like pour money into that, because I would say like, tech has at least demonstrated flywheels in the past. If you can get the developers, you can get the products. If you get that, then you can get the headsets out, and that's how you lead. It's almost like a Roku strategy with Oculus. Not quite. I understand there's problems with that analogy, but.
And then how does it give him the metaverse? It gives him the only entryway into it, or the only entryway into Facebook's closed system.
Yeah, I mean, I don't know that he gets the metaverse, but like what they're going to try to do is have their own enterprise software, system, and then you can have plugins on top of that, and you can build into their software. And I think they kind of want to become Windows of the metaverse and then have a closed system.
And then it's just all ads everywhere you look.
Yeah. Yeah. Well, that's a real question is, do people trust them enough to allow Facebook to do it? But I'll tell you what, I don't trust Apple at all. And I know I was too hard on Apple a couple episodes ago, but like, I do not believe that is some, oh, we're here for you. Fuck that. That's some
I don't trust any of them.
Nonsense.
None of them are trustworthy. They're all scary.
Yeah. And I mean, I don't know. I just think it's a natural conclusion of once you're public and you have to show growth. Like, I don't know. I think you get perverse incentives.
We've got a little bit of
at
time.
A certain size.
Let me, there's a question. I got some questions for you guys. There's a question here about what's the difference between return on invested capital, return on equity, return on assets. Do you guys want to take a shot at that?
Yeah. Return on assets is like your unlevered return on assets. Sorry for being obvious, but it's the truth.
It's worth, let's talk about what they actually are.
Yeah. So, I mean, it's your asset base and net income. Let's just assume everything's clean and you're not adjusting anything. It's the net income divided by your total assets. Should give you an idea in theory of like how profitable your asset base is. Your return on equity is going to be influenced by the amount of leverage that you apply to that asset base. And then your return on invested capital includes working capital. Like, you're going to give yourself some benefit for some payables and maybe some liabilities and whatnot that create the working capital cycle of the business. The assets, like your return on assets, would not give you credit for any of the positive effect of liabilities to the extent there is any.
I would add that in general, when you're thinking through return on whatever it is in this domain, that it really helps to try to think of it from a business person's perspective. And what is it that is needed to create that dollar of revenue, to create that eventual return? And getting hung up on accounting definitions or academic definitions they're a place to start, but you have to think through as a business person and really like look at a balance sheet and say, what is required to generate this? And it doesn't matter what they call it, but in the real world, what is happening? And I find that will eliminate a lot of the arguments and sloppy thinking around what is a business actually doing.
I mean, return on invested capital, you can argue that intangibles shouldn't be in that, right? But then it depends if you're acquisitive and all that. I don't know. I will say one thing that I really enjoyed talking to Kyler Hassan about this. His perspective, like if you lever up and you make an acquisition and then you pay down the debt, you're using equity, right? You might get the time value of the equity, but like fundamentally you're using equity. A business like TransDigm that buys a business and then improves the business metric to the point that they can continue to not pay down the debt, that's like truly not using equity. And that's like a wrinkle between these serial acquirers that do it well. Now, one can say, well, if you have a bunch of debt and it goes south, is it a zero? And I would say, yes, CLTs, even though it's not a zero, folks. I'm just saying that's the risk.
There's a question here about, I saw Scotty Jackson had one about yen Liao. So this is someone had suggested to me that I go and do some research on yen a little while ago and then linked up to his presentation to the Microcap Club, Ian Castle's Microcap Club. It's a really great presentation. It's worth having a look at. He's an Aussie who's lived in New York for a long time now, I think 20 years or something like that. And he runs a firm called Aravat Capital, ARAVT, something like that.
The game within the game.
Yeah, the presentation's called The Game Within the Game. Absolutely fascinating presentation because he's got an interesting approach where he's not in that micro cap where they're still doing the testing to see if the product is, you know, the product market fit. They're to the point where they're in the replication stage. So they've got the business model right, and they're building that, and that's what their bread and butter is. They try to find those sort of firms that have that rapid period of growth where they're just replicating, and then they're looking for things that aren't particularly cyclical, so that where there's volatility, the volatility's in the price rather than in the business results. So if they see lots of volatility in the price, they can take advantage of it, knowing that the volatility won't be in the business results. They've got some great returns. It's a very interesting presentation. It's worth checking out. I tweeted it out yesterday, and I think you can also find it on Microcap Club YouTube channel. Are you familiar with Yen? Either of you guys familiar with Yen?
I've heard fantastic things about him. I reached out to him to do a pod, and he said he's all talked out, which I can understand.
Mouth taping, they'll fix that.
Yeah, he's like, I don't know. I shared everything I got for this year. I said, that makes sense to me, man. When you're ready to share again, let's chat.
Yeah, he did Bobby Crafts as well. I think I haven't seen that one yet, but that looked good.
Yeah, no, everyone that I know that has talked about him says that when he's talking about compounders and the way that he analyzes longs, it would behoove people to listen.
Yeah, Ian says he does a very deep dive.
Shout out to Ian. Shout out to Scotty. 2 of the 10. Bill Miller's the 3rd. Who else is out there?
There's a lot of guys.
I wonder if the Buff Dog's listening. What's up, Buff Dog?
He probably waits until it comes out on audio.
You think? Yeah, that's right. He's deferring the cookie. Of course.
Marshmallow. Yeah.
That too.
We got about 7 minutes left, amigos. So throw in any questions that you have. I'll scroll back through and see if I can find some. Have I tried Kane's chicken tenders yet? No, I haven't. There's the lines every time I drive down the street for all the chicken places. The lines are just out the door. It's nuts.
You even eat stuff like that? You're beautiful. I assumed you didn't. Yeah.
Too many sit-ups, man. I mean, maybe. I'm not saying no. Friday, Saturday night.
Oh yeah. Life's too short not to do some of that.
How often do you mentally go through any one trade? How often do you mentally go through any one trade?
What's that mean? Like reviewing it?
Yeah, I'm not sure. Well, let's talk a little
I'll tell you what, I do a lot better if I thought a lot less.
That's definitely
honestly.
A bull market comment.
No, it's not. It's not at all. One of my absolute fucking weaknesses is impatience and overtrading. 100%. I know it about myself, and I would just do better if I did the guy spear, buy it, and go look in 2 years and don't touch it for that long. And I sit there, and in between a quarter when there's no real news, I think about stuff, and it's a deficiency that I have, and it is one of my weaknesses.
Box combo, no slaw, extra toast is the Kane's order. Okay, thanks for that, Beefy. I'll get that one next time. I got to feed a family of 5, so we get a big haul and we go through the.
Can we get sponsored by them?
Yeah,
we need something.
Anyone.
Google just takes these 32 cents every time.
$1.87. She doesn't go far. You can
just
get I'm
just trying to tell people about the Gates chip. It's not my fault.
My wife reports that the Costco hot dog, you've now apparently got to go through security. At least in California, you do before you can get access to it.
Makes
There's no
sense.
Rolling up outside, or the Los Angeles one.
Can I say something serious? I want to thank. I want to thank.
It remains to be seen.
The guy from Bridgewater followed up with me, wrote me very, very detailed commentary. I still don't know why some of our listeners listen to us. I hope we bring some happiness to your life. We sincerely appreciate your input. So thank you. That's an honest comment.
So I got a good one.
Except for the trolls.
Yeah.
Thoughts on companies with 2 or more classes of shares and all the voting rights are concentrated within a single family. So this is something that I did a little bit of research on, because clearly it cuts both ways, right? If you've got a great family with concentrated voting power, then that's the ideal situation. If you have a family that isn't great with concentrated voting power, that's the worst situation. And so there's nothing like quantitative about concentration of shareholders. necessarily leads to better results. The diffusion is great if they're bad and you can have some sort of catalytic event to come through and tip them out. Concentration is great if they're good. So there's other criteria there. That's my 2 cents.
My gut answer is if you're looking for the huge outliers, you probably want to fish in that pond. And I'm thinking like Buffett, Zuck, Bezos, like, and I'm not even necessarily saying dual class.
Malone.
I'm just saying like clear voting control. Founder-led voting control is probably where you're going to find the biggest outcomes. But if they do something like Zuck chose to do with all this investment in the metaverse and you don't agree with it,
you're along for the ride.
You're screwed.
I saw a good thing.
But if you got liquidity, just sell.
JT, you got 2 cents?
I think you guys are right. I mean, I think founder or at least owner operator mindset is and skin in the game is hugely important. However, the dual class can create different sets of skin for different shareholder bases, and that could be problematic. So yeah, I think both of your thinking around it makes sense to me.
I didn't mean to forget Malone. Love you, doctor.
I shouted at mine.
Okay, there you go.
I saw a chart yesterday. I wasn't sure. It was per Bry's. If you had shamelessly cloned per Bry using 13F data, which is delayed, and then you had been fully invested and rebalanced quarterly to the portfolio as it was disclosed, you've like handily beaten. I think that the base was 2009, so this is pretty recent history to date. You've handily beaten the MSCI universe that he's invested in. I don't know how he has performed relative to that tracking portfolio. I couldn't see it. Yeah, I couldn't see how he had done, but I just thought it was interesting because that was one of the things that JT talked about a few weeks ago, and it's one of the things that I, employ in my process. That I really try to build as JT puts it, build a robot of yourself or build a bot of yourself that then, implements the trades without fear or favor. Because there are plenty of times that I look at it and it makes me a little bit nervous too. But I think it's a better approach, and it seems to certainly have worked for Bry's bot. I'm not going to have a lot of people joining me on that journey, but that's the way I'm doing it.
I have nothing to add.
Yeah, that's well, we talked about this already, but it's that the fact that you're a different version of yourself every time you sidle up to the to the trade desk could be good or could be bad.
Jake,
Mine varies depending where the sun's out.
Do you know any ways to systematize that or maybe track how you think? And okay, well, maybe someday you'll have some announcements. I don't know.
Someday we'll slay this beast.
There we go. Do it before we eat all that cat poop.
Yeah, exactly.
Eat the cat poo, then go and build the bot.
Then go YOLO.
The bot will be like the 8%, and then when you go increasingly nuts from all the cysts in your mind, the bot will stay sane the whole way through.
But aggressive.
Yeah.
But aggressive.
Sane but aggressive.
Yeah. There you go. That's a good approach. Sane but aggressive.
Yeah. The conservative aggressive cat poop eater. It's the next book.
That's it, amigos. That was fun.
Oh gosh. Going out on a high note.
Way to end it. Have a safe flight, Toby.
Thanks, guys.
Yeah.